Talking Fun with Edo Podcast.
Hi everyone, it is me, Edo IV, and thank you for tuning in to my first podcast called Talking Fun with Edo. For this episode, I'm going to explain to you guys who I am and where I came from, and also the basics of what this podcast represents. If any of you are animators, you guys can animate this if y'all like to. This is public. This is completely public domain, so I don't mind who used this clip or whatever for it. So it's all good. And this is pretty much, as people would say, my anime origin story. So here we go. My story starts off in April 28th of 1997. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. My mom is named Monica, and my father has the same name that I have. His name is Eddie Hughes III, and I am Eddie Hughes IV. We lived there for a while, and then by 3 years later, I have a little sister named Godavari Hughes. During this time, I've also developed something else that was a struggle at first, but then later on, it got so much easier to have it, and I still remain proud to have it to this day, which is autism. When having autism, there is a lot of questions of how does it work, like how does someone function? Basically, motor skills or certain things that people will find easy, it's actually way more complicated for us than possible, like opening doors, learning literary jokes, and just anything that seems to be like structurally easy to do is actually hard for us. And another report that says that we become very attached to things too, so that's another factor about it. From that time, that's when, once my sister was born, we were in California for a little bit. Then after that, we spent the life from my sister when she was born all the way to 2017, which is Louisiana, where this is where my father was born and raised. Where we were at first was an apartment in Baton Rouge, and then by that point, by December of 2004, that's when we moved to where we stay as of to this day for my parents' house, which is in Prairieville, Gonzales. Good news about this is that it's not so far from Baton Rouge and New Orleans, which is the biggest attraction for tourists of Louisiana. And the food of Cajun and Mardi Gras, yeah, that's where I came from. So now you're all wondering at this point, what is it that I do to this day? What I do to this day is that I am a filmmaker, and I am a musical artist, a person that is really trying to make music. And how did this start? Filmmaking, that started when what we used to have in the house was a DVD and a VHS mixer. This was the second time we had this, but we couldn't really keep it for long because when we tried to play VHS stuff, it just kept turning off every time we tried to play it. But what I would do with that is I would just learn how to record at the right time, and then I would stop it. And on that factor, another fun fact about this is that I've learned to do that ever since I was 3 years old, But the biggest thing that really upgraded the impact of how I did this was when I was on the computer. And what we had was a Windows 7, and you already know where this is going. Window Movie Maker. It was the biggest thing I've ever had in my life, and it really changed my life and perspective on everything on how to make movies as well. Now, of course, what my movies used to be from 2008 all the way to 2013 and 14 is very different than what you guys see on YouTube right now. Most times you're going to find this stuff not on my YouTube page, but more likely on my Facebook page. And it is where I would take two of my favorite cartoons of all time, which is called Ed, Edd n Eddy and South Park, and I would just mix it in with a whole lot of different stuff. Different stuff meaning like Japanese comedy and like Japanese animation and just any other thing that I've found that's like, oh, this looks cool if I mix this with that. You know, that I rarely do those movies now. And what you'll also see is a mixture of what I would try to do back in '08 of Barry's Kobo's fifth single mixed with that, along with an anime called Azumanga, which is me and my little sister's favorite anime to watch. Speaking of which is anime. My very first one I've ever seen and remember of all time was Hamataro, and that became my first one. Everything that came after that, I've possibly seen on Cartoon Network and, of course, on YouTube as well. When I started to really, that's what this right here, I know it's a pretty cliche thing to say, but this really did help me understand Japanese culture a lot, especially because this wasn't the only thing I was watching. You know, I was getting into Japanese artists and Japanese entertainment as well. And the very first one that I really gotten into during that time was, which is a video that is coming very soon for you all, Shonen Knife. The very first time that I've seen them was a DVD set in one of the cereal boxes that have episodes of other Cartoon Network shows solve crimes and stuff like that, and shows their music video as the Powerpuff Girls soundtrack. And I didn't really get into them until later on, but that is identical. This is the I also just remember beforehand of a movie I used before the next one when I went to California was called Photoshop. Yes, you can actually make movies on Photoshop. Certain stuff is a little hard to use, but it is very easy to do. It's almost like in the same way of Window Movie Makers, if that makes sense, or AVS Video Editor combined. So now what I remember what program I used when I was finishing up in high school, and it was because we were using it for projects. And I've actually made a little bit of side projects on to the side, was called Final Cut Pro. The stuff I used for it was the things needed for 2016, which was a project where this was my first documentary that talked about my life and talked about music and cartoons and other things of what I was interested in. And also The Gift, which was a horror film of a person that was like sending roses to my sister, but then it just got creepy, but it was a lot of fun to do. But unfortunately, like my character dies in the film, but it was a really fun movie to really do. It was really so much fun. So after that, this was when unfortunately we couldn't really stay in California long enough, especially since we didn't really have the money for it. And plus, we were staying at my mom's friend's house, which her name is Bridget. And, we couldn't really stay there any longer. So we really tried to adjust with going back to Louisiana for me to start the film school there. But where I was at, I still had to learn the stuff that I've already learned when I was like in high school and everything. And plus the next year, it wouldn't even be worth it either. So thankfully, my mom put out myself some resumes for me to go to colleges anywhere from any type of state. And thankfully, this is kind of how I got here now, which this is a college from Full Sail University. They made the most messages. They gave me a lot of stuff, and they had a place for me to stay, which at the time it was called CVI, Collegiate Village Inn. But as you guys know, it's being teared down and closed right now. So now I'm living to a place next door to it. So that's where I live. And that's how I started school. I started school for film, and where I'm at right now is recording arts. So one of the two last things that I use right now is Adobe Premiere. This is a program that was given to us so we could learn the new ways of filmmaking, and I've also put some other projects to the side with that. And the one that I use right now to make movies and stuff like this is iMovie. That's how excuse me. iMovie. So that's how the first project I've ever used with iMovie is definitely the ones you've seen, because the ones that I've put out previously, they were just videos of just stuff I was putting together. It's not that important. The first thing you see for my iMovie project, and it clearly shows it too, is my first video called Opening Presents. And also to this point, I could talk about my YouTube history, because that was the very first video in a while I posted from YouTube in the year of 2018. When I was first on YouTube, it was 10 years ago. It was, again, the movies that I've been talking about before. I would export them from Real Player, and then I would send them to my dad. Unfortunately, when that happened, my dad couldn't get into his account anymore, but thankfully he started a new one. And then for me, that's when I tried to start my own channel, putting this stuff in there. And how many subs I got from that moment was 100. But from that point, and even when I was putting the thing of copyright of me saying I didn't own it and all that stuff, it still got shut down, and it only lasted for 4 months. What I remember correctly, my channel was called Eddie Blue 9. That was the first one I had. I actually had it 2 years ago, but I didn't use it until 2 years later. And then 2 years after that, that's when I came back with another one that basically did the same thing, and also just put some stuff that no one else was seeing on YouTube, of Japanese and Korean stuff that I just found interesting, and I just wanted to upload it on YouTube. Only lasted for 5 months, and actually that was the moment where I kind of was trying to make a song for the very first time. It was when I was mixing up Tyler the Creator's song I Hate You, along with another song that was playing in an anime called IGPX. I tried to put that together, and I'm not sure if I could find the project right now, but if I gotten any word, I will remember to share it with you guys. And I also remember another song I made. It was an acapella called You Only Live Once in Your Life. I may honestly rendition that song later in the future, along maybe with the first one. The first one was for a girl that I really had a crush on, but The crush didn't really worked out so well, and she moved on to somebody else. Her name was Lovely, and it was from 2010 all the way to 2013. So back on to filmmaking, filmmaking on YouTube. I did that. Only lasted for a few, the same amount of months. I actually gotten close to have 200 subs at that point, but like I said, it didn't really last long, and that's how it got shut down. Other things that I was doing on the side, and it's still being planned out to this day, was making my own type of Asian groups that was based off the ones I've seen. Still being worked on, but in the near future, something will come up. And also, I've made another name for myself, which is a stage name, because I'm also a person that's trying to be an upcoming, artist that does music. My stage name is called Fast Ed, and the story of that is my coach, when I would run track for like PE, I knew I wasn't really the fastest runner because my legs always felt like it was going to give out. But my coach would always scream at me, it's like, go fast, Eddie, go. And that's how I got that name, because especially another thing that I tend to do a lot is think real fast or move really fast at times. I say in the middle 50% of the time, but I am called Fast Ed. Originally, I remember I want my name to be like Special Ed, but there was already a rapper named that, so I couldn't have his name. That's his name. So my thing is I call myself Fast Ed, and that's how that story goes. And as of YouTube making, so that channel, I had a previous channel with my name on it, and it got shut down because of the documentary I tried to put in 2016. That got shut down because of a Korean song that I used for copyright, and it just shut my whole YouTube channel down. But thankfully, I just had extra ones on the side. But it was hard trying to like recreate what I already made, and it was legit too. And this was actually interesting enough. It's not the first time I've been on camera to make movies like this, and like I said, unfortunately, I cannot. It's the burn disc. I've had a lot of those, so, and it was a lot of movies. It was 2010 was the very first time I put myself on film, and like I said, if I can find it, I'll share it to you guys. It's kind of like in a vault as of now, but that was the first time I've ever shown myself on film in 2000. It's 2010 to 2011, because I don't think I've ever really done any other film like that until, right around now in 2016. And that is my ideal of filmmaking. That is how I made filmmaking. Music wise, what I'm doing now is I have Logic Pro X. That's what I use to make music, especially the theme song you heard while for the beginning of this program here. And that's how it's going. The thing is that I've written lyrics before, but I never really had a beat to it, and this is where I'm making beats right now. And as far as filmmaking goes, I believe this is a complete story about my filmmaking, and especially my story. There's only one thing I've just realized, I just remembered, was Florida. So this right here is my third time since 2017. First time I went to Florida was with my family, and we were going to Disney in 2004. I was 7 years old, and it was a business trip. Second time was an outdoor history fest, and that's when I met a girl. We only talked for a few moments of time, and it was because she just had on an Odd Future shirt, and we just talked for a little bit, and that was it. We was just like a quick like hi, and then just like we left. And the third time is right now, which is in Full Sail University, and still a student and everything, and that is my story. Next thing that is coming up in the later future for my projects for my YouTube channel is not just Shonen Knife and SHE, but other ones that just came up, and I was thinking I'll do those two is Tomi Shinohara and TNC Bumbar. If there's any other groups you guys would like me to do, I would do my best to do it the best way I can. And also, now I can explain the premise of this podcast right here. The premise of this podcast is basically like an interview, like talk show, like it's an interview talk show where we just we go back and forth of stories that you're sharing to me, and I just communicate back to you, and that's the premise of this podcast right here. So now this has been the demo episode of Talking Fun with EDO'S Podcast. I'm glad you all enjoyed, and now we're going to move on to the sponsors for this video. So here we go. Another thing to say before I leave is I hope you guys enjoyed my last video of me reviewing Puffy Yami Yumi. And my biggest thing I would like to really reach out for the end of this year is to reach to 100 subs and more. So please like, share, sub, and hit notifications if I ever release more stuff and all that good stuff. Love you all. So the sponsors for this first episode demo project of Talking Fun with Edo is the Apang 18, Al Manson, Raevon Redding, Don Carlton, Jacob Bushmire, Keil Dullea, Stephanie Lim, non-Disney character, Jessica McDonald, Sunli Mathora, not Jack Nickelson, Ronald Lacey, George A., Tyne Chuggnier, Nathan Stallone, Mealine Leister, and Christopher Lester. And now on to the inspirational podcast of how I was thinking about this idea, which is In My Head Podcast, Fun with Dumb, Stiff Socks Podcast, Tigerbelly Podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, the Official Podcast, VLADTV, No Jumper, and Michael Andre 8 Vibes. If there's other things you guys would like me to cover for these type of podcasts where I just talk about, talk to myself and stuff like that, please let me know. And also, another podcast that we had in the past 2 years ago was the Learning Shonen Project with my best friends, Kai and Andrew. We only had one because basically there was a lot of other things we were talking about and we couldn't really fit the time into it. And I definitely would need permission from them because there's 2 other episodes that we did, but again, we couldn't really release them. So I have to really have permission for them in order for this to happen. But other than that, thank you all for watching my very first episode of Talking with EDO'S Podcast. And as usual, I'll see you guys later next time. Sayonara. Bye-bye.
Talking Fun with Edo.